Today we are going to discuss about roots. So roots are also known as the underground support system of a plant. Right, so we'll see why this is true in the subsequent slides. So the first thing is the definition. What is a root? Right. So root is the underground part of a plant. So in the previous class, we have studied that there are two components, right? The shoot system and the root system. Shoot system are the components that is above the soil. Root system is below the soil. So roots are the parts of a plant that grows below the ground, right? So they are the underground part of a plant. What are the functions of roots? They absorb water and minerals from the soil. But why do they need to absorb water and minerals from the soil? We can understand this from an example. Say, for example, calcium. Calcium is a mineral. If we don't have enough calcium in our body, then our bones will not be strong. Similarly, if plants don't have a lot of calcium, or if they don't take calcium from the soil, it will not be able to sustain its growth, or say, it will not have that strength, right? So each of the minerals, they serve different purposes, and that is why plants need minerals. Right? Water has a more major role to play. The first important role is it helps in the process of photosynthesis, which is the process by which plants prepare their own food. Right. So this is the first use of water in plants. The second use is that it also, say for example, minerals. Minerals are present in the soil, but how will this part or the leaf of the plant get this mineral? It needs to be transported. So it is transported via the roots, but through water, right? If you don't have a channel, then you won't be able to transport the minerals, right? So it is just like water carrying the sand along with it, right? Otherwise, in absence of water, will not be able to transport the minerals. If the stem does not have sufficient water, what will happen? It will dry off, right? And it will not be able to sustain its weight. So water also provides firmness to the stems, right? So that is why it is able to hold the plant together in place, right? At the same time, so when there's a lot of heat, we usually sweat, right? Similarly, plants also sweat, so that sweat helps us cool down a bit. Similarly, plants also sweat, right? So the process is slightly different in case of plants, but they need water for that as well, right? So that process is known as transpiration. So we now know that water and minerals are needed by the soil. Who provides them with water and mineral? The soil provides them with water and mineral. And how do they get it? They get it from the roots. Without roots, this would not have been possible, right? So root has one more application. They help the plant stay firmly fixed in the ground, right? So plants stay in the ground, so they have a foundation because of the roots. Without the roots, they won't be able to stay firm, right, above the soil. Okay. So some roots can grow very deep in the soil to reach water. So some roots, they can grow so deep such that they even reach the groundwater level, right, and access water from there directly. So we have discussed these functions of roots. The first function is absorb water, right? Root absorbs water from the soil. The second function is it absorbs minerals, right? So minerals are needed for growth. We have already seen. So roots absorb minerals needed for growth. It also anchors the plant. So to keep it firm in a place, that is why we need roots. So roots keep the plants fixed firmly in the soil, right? So what might happen to a plant if its roots are damaged? Right, so think about this. What will happen if roots are not there? So you can just, so whenever you get a question like this, just try to see what is the function of root. So that function will not be served. For example, if roots are damaged, so it will not be able to absorb water. It will not be able to absorb minerals. The plants will not be anchored. Right? You've seen some cases of soil erosion wherein plants are uprooted as well. Right? So because the roots are not firmly in place, so they are not able to fix the soil in that place. Right? So in absence of roots, the plants are going to die obviously, because these are some of the major purposes. Because without water, it will not be able to prepare the food. Without minerals, it will not be able to grow, right, and do its life processes, right, and it will also not be at a place. So that is why it will not be able to survive. Okay. We now have the types of roots. There are mainly two types of roots. One is the tap root, the other is fibrous root. So we call this as tap root system and fibrous root system. Okay, what is the difference between the two? The tap root system has one main root. So this is the main root. If you look at this example, so this is carrot, so it has a main root. Okay, fibrous root system does not have any main root. Okay, you can see there is a very large root coming out. So this is the main root. Fibrous root system, you will see most of them, I mean all of them are identical. So there is no main root here. Right, so out of this main root, so you'll see smaller side roots. Right, here you'll see that all of them are similar. Right, so first difference was that there is a main root. Here we don't have any main root. Then from the main root, you have branches of side roots coming out, which are smaller than the main root. Here you don't have any such branching because all roots are the same. Right? Now, if you look at the components of taproot system, right? First of all, let us understand how will a root look like. So if you have a root, right, any root, be it taproot or fibrous root, roots will have root here. So earlier I mentioned one of the purpose of root, it was to absorb water and minerals from the soil, right? So if I say stomach helps in digestion of food, right? So it is not the stomach that helps, but there are certain compounds in the stomach, say for example hydrochloric acid, that is one of the components. So it helps in digestion. Not only hydrochloric acid, there are a lot of components that we'll study in the later class. So it is not only the stomach, but there are some parts in stomach that helps us digest food. Similarly, when I say roots absorb mineral from the soil and water from the soil, it is not the root, but the root hairs inside the root that helps it to absorb water and minerals from the soil. Okay, so this is basically, so any root if you see, it will have small projections coming out, and it will be a lot of projections, be it tap root or fibrous root. So if you eat some root vegetable, right? So for example, a carrot, you'll see small fiber like thing coming out. So these are typically root hairs. Okay, so let us see how a tap root system looks like. So this is the main root, right? This is the main root, also known as the primary root, right? So the longer root that uh, goes down, so it goes very deep, so it is known as the primary root, right? Then there are slightly shorter root coming out from the primary root, so they are known as secondary roots. Okay, and if you look at this root, there are even more smaller branches coming out from here. So this was the largest branch, the primary, then a small branch came out of this, the secondary, and one more even smaller branch came out of this. So that is the tertiary root. So if you look at this branch, so it is known as tertiary root. Okay, so primary roots are the main root, it is the largest one. Then comes secondary, which originates from primary, and then comes tertiary, which originates from secondary. Okay, then you have root hairs. Root hairs, as I mentioned, no matter what type of root it is, be it main root will also have small projections of root hair. Secondary root will also have small projections of root hair. Tertiary root will also have small projections of root hairs. So it looks like this, right? And the end of this is known as tip. So this is the tip of the root, right? Which is the end point of that root. If we look at fibrous root, so there is no such classification because all roots are identical. So there is no primary or main root, there is no secondary root, there is no tertiary root, because all roots are the same. Right, you can see there are multiple roots coming out. So there is not a single primary root, and that is why there is no secondary and tertiary root. So you have fibrous roots, and then each of them have root hairs. Okay, although branching is also there, just like this, branching is also there, right? But we don't classify them as primary and secondary. We classify the taproot system as having primary because there is no primary or main root here. All of them are primary, right? Then we look at some examples. So what are some examples of taproot root system? So all the foods that we have underground, So that grows underground are examples of taproot system. For example, carrot. You can see it has a very large, so it is a type of root. Radish, it is also a type of root. Turnip, it is also a type of root because all these they grow underground. Beetroot, it is also a type of taproot system, right? Examples of fibrous roots. So mostly uh, the plants that occurs in groups or clusters. For example, grass. So it is an example of fibrous root system. Rice, it is also an example of fibrous root system, and wheat, it is also an example of fibrous root system. Okay. So what are some of the key differences? Taproot has one main root, right? Fibrous root does not have any main root. So this has one main root, it does not have any main root, right? Taproot has one thick main root with smaller side roots that we have studied secondary, tertiary, right? Fibrous root, many thin roots of smaller size, right? So a lot of thin roots you'll have of smaller size because there is no main root here. Usually found in dicot plants and usually found in monocot plants. So something not in your syllabus, but I think it would be good if you just understand what dicot and monocot plants are. So see, what happens is that whenever a plant grows, it always grows from a seed, right? And I have two seeds here. One is corn, the other is chickpea, right? So if you try to split chickpea into two parts, it will split. However, if you try to split this into two parts, it will not. It will just have one part, right? So what is this purpose of this? So this part is known as cotyledon, right? So this is also a cotyledon. What is this purpose of cotyledon? When a plant is just growing, right, or in its development phase, just like when we are a baby, okay, they cannot prepare their own food, neither they can absorb nutrients from the soil. So what it does is during that growth and development phase, it provides food and minerals to this developing plant, right? So this is what a cotyledon is. So in some plants, there can be two such cotyledons. So such plants are known as dicots because it has two cotyledons. So di for two and cotyledon, cot for cotyledon. This it cannot be split into two parts, so that is only mono. Mono means one, so it is a monocot. Right, so there is a pattern that we'll see. If it is a taproot system, if it is any one of these, right, so it will have dicot plants. Okay, that means that if we have a plant of this, baby plant of this, it will have two leaves like this, right, just like this, right? So it will have two cotyledons. However, if you have a baby plant for plants in the fibrous root system, for example, wheat, rice, grass, so it will just have one main cotyledon, right? No two cotyledons, only one cotyledon. So fibrous root is mainly found in monocot plants. Tap root is usually found in dicot plants. So you'll study monocot and dicot when you go to higher classes. Some examples: carrot, radish, turnip, beetroot. So this we have already seen. Right? Examples here are wheat, rice, and grass. Okay. So this is what the types of roots are. So we have seen what roots are, what are the functions of roots. Now we are discussing what are the types of roots. So there were two types of roots, which is the taproot and fibrous root. Okay, again, just to reiterate, we have this comparison. So we have taproot, one main root. Fibrous root, there is no main root. Taproot grows very deep in the soil. So this will grow very deep in the soil. However, this will spread. So that is why I mentioned it usually occurs in plants that grow in clusters. So that is why it will spread. So if you have a large number of plants, the root will spread like this, right? So it grows deep, it grows wider, right? So the roots are widely spread, the roots penetrate deep in the soil, okay, for taproot. So for taproot, the roots penetrate deep in the soil. For fibrous root, the roots spread widely in the soil. Okay, it has a thick primary root with smaller branches, which is secondary and tertiary. Many thin roots of similar size. So it has very small thin roots that are of the same size, like this. Right. So some examples are carrot, radish, turnip, beetroot. Here the examples are wheat, rice, and grass. Right? They are usually found in dicot plants, the taproot system, and the fibrous root is usually found in monocot plants. Okay. Now, what do you think? Which root system would be able to absorb water from deeper layer of soil? Should it be the taproot system or fibrous root system? It should be the taproot system. Why? We saw that it grows deep into the soil, so it can reach inside very deep layers, right? So it can absorb water from even deeper layers of the soil. So the answer should be taproot. Okay. Now there is one more function that we did not discuss of roots. Roots are also used to store food. Okay. So if you look at these examples, carrot, radish, turnip, beet, so they all are foods that we eat. Notice that these are not, I'm not saying these are fruits. Fruits are something that comes from flower, right? So some fruits we may eat, some we may not. For example, some varieties of berries that are also fruits we are not able to eat because they may be poisonous. Foods are something that we eat or consume, right? So plants, they store food inside roots as well. For example, carrot, radish, they all grow underground, so they are roots. So this means plants are storing their food inside underground or in the form of roots, right? So we discussed some functions of roots. These were absorbing water and minerals and providing support. Now there is one more function. Plants also use roots to store their food, right? We'll see why do they need to store food in the subsequent slide. That is very important and that has a very important analogy. We can apply that. Uh, so one thing that you'll notice that all of these, they have tap roots, right? All four of them have tap roots. They store food and they are eaten by humans as well, right? So plants, they store food in the form of roots as well. Okay, so this is one more function of roots. So some roots store extra food for the plant. The stored food helps the plant grow and survive. So say for example, what happens is that in case of emergency, right? So we keep aside some extra money, right, in a safe place. So it is just the same thing for plants. So for emergency wherein there is a very harsh climate, right? So there is no rain for a longer period of time. There's no sunlight, right? And the plants are not able to prepare their food. So they'll still need the food for their growth, right? So they are storing these underground, the foods underground, to have it later when there is a crisis. Okay. Say for example, we also store money, right? Safely to avoid any theft. Similarly, plants also, they need to avoid their food or protect their food from pests. So that is why they store it underground. Right, so this is why plants need to store food underground. Okay, so when we are eating a carrot or radish, right, we are not actually eating the fruit, we are eating the root, right? So these are root of the plant that we are eating. So which of the following is a food storing root? It is a carrot, right? Because grass, rice and wheat, so they don't store their food in the form of root, right? Only carrot, as we have seen here, they store food in the form of root. Okay, now we are done with this chapter on roots or this topic on roots. We'll just see some questions to check our understanding. So we have to identify the root types in the first question, whether it is a taproot system or a fibrous root system. Carrot, it is a taproot system because it has a main root. Right, so try answering it on your own. So you can pause this video and then try to answer it on your own and then check back while we are discussing this answer. Rice is a fibrous root because you can see there is no primary root and all the roots have spread it out, right, widely in this direction. Beetroot, it is a taproot, again one main root. Grass, fibrous root, again there's no main root and the roots are spreading widely. Okay. Look at the plants below. Which two plants have tap roots? So this has a taproot, carrot, and beetroot. Right? We are now able to recollect the names. Right? Rice and grass, they are fibrous roots. So if you study with images, it becomes more clear. Right? So once you see rice, this image will come up. Once you see grass, this image will come up. So you'll recollect it later that it has fibrous root system. Which function is not performed by roots? So roots have some important functions. Which of them is not? Which of the following is not one of them? The first is absorb water from soil. Root does absorb water from soil. Absorb minerals from the soil. They do absorb minerals from the soil. Make food for the plant. So the subsequent slides or subsequent topics while we are discussing leaves, we'll see that roots do not store food. I mean prepare food. It is the leaves that prepare food. Okay, hold the plant firmly in the soil. It is true, and they also store food. Right? Which is common among these plants? Carrot, radish, turnip, beetroot. They are stems? No, they are roots, right? They store food in roots? Right. They are fibrous roots, they are tap roots. They grow in water, they do not grow in water. What they mean by grow in water is they are aquatic plants. They are not aquatic plants like lily. Lily is an aquatic plant. Say they need soil to grow, not only water. Okay. Why do you think some plants store their foods in roots? We have discussed it briefly. Try to answer it yourself. Why do you think some plants store their foods in roots? Right? What is the need to store food in roots? Okay. So again, what is the takeaway from this lecture? Roots absorb water and minerals. So these are the purpose. It anchors the plant firmly. And some roots also store food, like we have just seen. Carrot, radish, turnip, and beetroot. Okay. So this concludes our chapter on root system. Right. So in the next class, we'll study stems.